Well, once again, it's time, my friends, for another meet and greet. We're Southern Fried and nationwide, so hang on to your seat. Look around, here's what I found. I guess you'll never know what you'll see on the Southern Fried Podcast Show. Yeehaw!
And yeehaw! This is your host, Dave, from Dave in the AM and Front Porch and Hump Day News and every other kind of program we have. This is the I Remember That, our third edition of this. I Remember That. And you know how it is. We like to look back when we're, think we get older. Me and Rob joke about being elderly or getting elderly. I'm a little older than him, so he likes to have fun with that. That's cool. But we do tend to look back and we have a lot of memories and things change. And this program is dedicated to remembering those things. And I remember listening to a lot of the people that were older than me when I was young, those that were senior, very senior folks, and they would talk about things and you'd be like, I don't remember that. But I do remember a lot. And you feel like when they're talking about those things, you kind of wish you had been there, like you could see that. They talk in a language that you don't understand because you don't remember how it used to be. Well, this show is really dedicated to us who remember those things. And maybe someone will see this and say, okay, I did not know they did that, or I remember hearing stories about it. Last week we were looking at drive-in movie theaters. That's the background there. And I decided to keep that. That's going to be our I Remember That background for this show. And I just like that picture. It's kind of represents a lot of things we used to do, or maybe still can. And somebody was telling me after the show there was aired last week of one close by that you can go to. And I think I'm going to try to do that. But some things you can't go back. Just can't go back and do them, right? Well, I was thinking for this program, and I was just thinking what I want to cover. There's so many things, but because it goes back a lot further than me, it goes way back, and the money changed on it, and that's the bottle deposit. You see under my name there, and this goes way back, and you'll see it mentioned in a lot of shows, a lot of the old 50s, 60s, 70s shows. Really, I guess even into the 80s. And I don't know if there's anything out there like that today. In fact, you can't even hardly find bottles to drink out of. It's usually plastic or cans or whatever. I do want to say I appreciate that some of the restaurants who still sell cold bottled drinks. There's a couple of restaurants I can think of that you go in and they've got them in the ice, just like the old days. And they're trying to make you think back like it used to be. You think of stuff like that, and you can buy that. And I'm a sucker for it every time. I'll go to the table to eat, and I'll just go ahead and grab one of those and say, pay for it there, put it on my bill or whatever. But I like the orange, and there's usually an orange crush or something like that that's in there, or root beer. And I'm just a sucker for that because one, it tastes great. Two, it harkens back to my youth. And as I think about those times, let me dim this just a little bit. Way it won't be so bright on the screen off my glasses. But as I think back to days like that, we did the same thing that kids had done for 2 decades. Or at least I would think, whenever glass bottles became redeemable, and you wanted to get your money back, and you could apply that towards the purchase of that or other things. And as a kid, way before I worked in grocery, I remember we would, like a lot of kids, you would gather up bottles or some change. You found some money, or so you got a few cents for doing a chore or something, and we would go up to a store. And I mean, like for 25 cents, you're getting candy and a comic book and another soda bottle of something, whatever that particular drink was. And it made summer afternoons real enjoyable. Then later on, and I want to kind of we did a lot of that. We did. Later on, though, I remember well, even then. I remember, and I didn't know I was going to go to work there at the time. I guess maybe it had something to do with it because it was close by. But I went to work at a grocery store. But before that, I would help my mom take those Coke bottles, 32 ounce, and carry those in. We'd usually have one for sure. Sometimes I had two. And at the store I worked at, you would stop right as you came in the door, which sometimes caused for confusion as people were trying to get in the door. And there would be a manager there or some designee that would be there, and they would give you credit for your bottles. And that was a big deal. They would have to constantly be taking some of these bottles and getting them back on the trucks. And I'm going to kind of go back to that because a lot of guys my age that worked at grocery in that time frame, they would definitely remember that because all the stores did something similar. But certainly as the old timers would call it, the red store, which is where I went to work, they would have that. And I don't remember ever having to man that station, but I do remember helping people that were bringing them in, having to move the bottles to the truck and bring full bottles into the store. And so first of all, I want to do an overlay that shows, not talks. I'm talking about getting older. I want to show an overlay that shows a lot of different bottles, different types, and we'll talk about those. And then I want to come back and I want to talk about my experience with working at the store and my memories of this, because it was a lot of work, a lot of heavy bottles, and it was not fun duty, honestly. And I'll tell you how my store used that at the time, and people that worked there would remember this. So first of all, let me put up the bottles. Now I did also the bottle caps. I want to talk about that too. A lot of them are Coke. So I have a lot of memories of that, but there are other ones there too. Sometimes you would have smaller ones, big ones, different brands too. I mean, I see Double Cola, 7-Up, and there's many others in there. The old Neha brings back some memories, don't it? Then you have the celebratory bottles. You see there the 1776 to 1976. Sometimes you would have special things like it, which made people come in and buy them more. Which everybody wanted one, but people would buy them and put them up, and you still see those people have put up. And I certainly wouldn't drink the contents of them after all these 40 plus years or whatever it might be, maybe close to 50 in some cases. But they want to retain their value. These do have money, even empty. They're in somewhat decent shape. They have a value that's more than you could have ever got for them in the day. And so there were so many Coke bottles, it was really hard to really have volume or value there, rather. We'll see the sheer volume of them. So many bottles and different sizes. Of course, the smaller one up there on the extreme left at the top, very common to the machines. And, it's amazing to me. We think of how hard those cans drop nowadays, or bottles. And there were times you would have a bottle that would break. Now, these were durable. They were pretty tough bottles. They weren't razor thin. These were very well made glass bottles. And for those that are watching this, didn't it just make it taste so much better? You cannot get that from plastic or aluminum. You just can't. If it's very cold, and those would come out of there sometimes with ice in them, and some of those boxes, those soda boxes. I say Coke, but there was so many kinds, Pepsi and different ones. But if the salesman, if he hit it just right and he cranked that thing up just right, those things, and even in the middle of heavy summer, they come out with ice in them. Oh, that was great. Of course, you didn't want it froze, then you'd have a whole other problem. But a little bit of ice floating around was always a good thing on a hot day. I did get those smaller bottles out of the machines, so I would get some of those, but those were not purchased for our home. We didn't deal with that. We did, and you see there, and there's some different kinds. And we see plastic with bottles in there, holders, carriers I'm talking about. We also see the wooden one, the crate type. I remember dealing with those a whole lot, but in a little bit different way than it's presented here. About the time that I went to work at the store, a lot of the bottles were carried in actually cardboard. You would see, we did have the crates, but they would sit down in there in those cardboard holders. So it was kind of it would keep them from knocking around. And the crate didn't have the slots in it like some of these others did. You would see that, but what we dealt with in volume was the ones with the cardboard, and they would slide down in there. And you would bring that in however you did. You had the little way to carry it. I always remember the ones handled. I really don't remember us ever bringing a case in or ones of the wooden and the handle on the ends. I don't remember us as a family ever bringing that top into the store. It was always a handle top. One I really remember is the cardboard one that you would have 6 bottles, 6 32-ounce bottles, and you'd bring that in, you get a credit for it, and you'd buy some more. I mean, that's what you were doing. You would buy more bottles. Now, my memories of this, well, let me, because I want to make this second part of this program really about my memories of this and kind of some things that went with that. But then you had the bottle caps, and you could still, everywhere you went had the little bottle cap holder, that you could put your bottle up there and take the cap off. Now, there are also some, a lot of these, not all of them, but some of them there was a screw top. Those come along later. Some of them were the straight caps, and boy, you'd really cut yourself. That was always a challenge. Some people like to show they could do that, or you would put it at the edge of something, hit it, and not really the best thing to do. You could chip that glass, but the caps themselves had value, and they had messages, and there was discounts sometimes on the top of those. And we can see here in these caps, there were all kinds. Really, it's another way to advertise. So you would take your cap off, and everybody had a something mounted at home, or they would have the little one that was in the Civil War drawer that you could pull out and open these up with. But you would look at the cap. You would look at the inside of the cap. Now, sometimes they would advertise and say, in certain caps, they would be prizes or way to redeem a gift or something, or a discount or whatever. So you always check your cap. They didn't all have that, but there were many times that they did. So the bottle cap was important too. And every kid used to like to, flip those things and toss them and do different things with them. It was, just kind of fun to have. And you could even collect them if you wanted to collect bottle caps. So that's a whole nother segment I just threw in there. As I saw that picture, I wanted to throw it in there because I was really thinking just of the bottles, and I really wasn't thinking of the caps. I almost really kind of forgot about that part of it. And so I'd love to have someone contact and through the email or message us on the Facebook or YouTube or wherever you see this at, X, wherever, Rumble, and many other streams, and just drop us a note. We'll eventually see that, and we check all those, and tell us and remind us, and we'll come back to it and mention it in next week. Kind of a look back. It's like the movie theater. I didn't remember there was one as close to me as it was. I thought there was one, but one of our followers mentioned another one. And so I want to take my grandkids to that because I bet they've never been to one. The drive-in movie theater, So a lot of memories of this. They were a big hassle, to be honest, if you worked at the store. Sorry, let me get a drink here. Speaking of all this Coke bottles and stuff, makes me thirsty. So when I went to work at the store, and we didn't have fancy titles back then, I was simply called a bag boy. Nowadays they're the something engineer or whatever they call them. We don't even take the groceries out and stuff in rare occasions anymore. It's all on you now. I don't know if anybody does that anymore. I guess if you buy something really big, they will, like at the big box store, like a TV or something, they'll go out and help you, or if you ask for help. But just as a matter of course, no, there's nobody taking your groceries out. And so that was a big deal. As a bag boy or someone who took groceries out, didn't make a lot of money in an hour, although it did add up if you worked. I started out part-time, but sometimes they'd call you in. You worked longer hours on weekends sometimes. After school, of course, in the summer, you could expand that a little bit. So the check did, it certainly had money on there, but I could make more than my check. And most places, with most people in service industry type stuff, even today, will say the same thing. You make more of the tips you do than on the check, although everything helps. And so I bagged groceries. I never got into stocking. I was kind of where I wanted to get. And I even thought about running a cash register. And I don't know what it was. I worked hard. But for some reason, my store manager, and he's the one who gave me the job. But he always held me back. He didn't like me. I don't know why. I was not in his clique. I'm sure he's deceased now. And honestly, it didn't end real well. I didn't appreciate how I was treated after an injury. And I'm not going to say I handled everything great because I didn't as a 16-year-old. So it's a learning experience. But that I learned a lot there. They were very almost military. And they would line you up and, how do you need to shave? Do you need to cut your hair? Do you need to get the stain off this shirt or this bow tie? We wore bow ties there. And some of you remember this, or wherever you worked. And so we'd have bagging grocery competitions that we had to go to, and you had to pass that. You don't put the rat poison with the meat kind of thing. And then they would cut the four, by the way, paper bags, not plastic. That didn't come along later. And they'd take a razor blade and cut the four corners, and it would unfold. And if anything fell, you had to do it over. So I don't remember that ever happening to me. And nor did I ever put rat poison with meat. I really paid attention. It wasn't that hard if he really was a fast worker and did stuff. But I just mentioned that as, that's some of my experiences. But this part here, the bottle deposit, was a big part. Like I said, I never had to take them in as far as giving the credit. That usually was handled by a manager. It was a way for them to meet the public as they come in, talk to them. So it was really a great customer service thing for the manager. Of course, he could direct traffic up there. Hey, get on down to Register 5. Hurry up, pick up the pace. We heard all that. They'd come out and call you in. They'd be waving you in. We were ordered to run back in those days. And or at least at my store. Now, some of them might have got away with it, but not there. But I did have to take the empties. And I never was allowed to drive the truck. They always had one guy. Of course, when I first went to work there, I was only 15. I kind of hedged on that a little bit. They had a couple of guys that would do that. They left a truck there for the Coke bottles. And they would pull it up and they'd put a couple of you out there on Coke bottle duty. So they didn't like all these empties sitting around. Plus you needed more full. And we had so many at the store because they would run these specials. And it actually, I don't know that I would say they took a loss. If the profit was there, it was very small, or I always heard they broke even on it to get people in there to buy everything else. And so many people bought the Coke products that it worked. And so that's why we kept a truck on the lot. We were constantly having to get out more fulls and get the empties, and they would come trade those out. Just bring a full truck, pick up the empties, take it back. Well, there's some things about that. So if you remember trading in bottles and getting money and stuff, I want to tell you the other part of that story. If you never experienced it on that side of it is, okay, somebody pulls the truck up, you've got these empties. So first thing you got to do, or you got to get the full off of there. And we had so many Cokes. There wasn't a lot of room in the back of our store for storage. There was some, not a lot. And if a lot of people remember this, they kept the Coke in the front of the store outside. They would just stack them up down there. They'd be everywhere. And so they'd pull up the truck and you'd get some more. You'd get the rest of the fulls off because, you had to make an empty spot to put the empties. So you pull the full off. That was, heavy and a job. That's why you had to work. You'd have a couple of folks. And then you would take those and you would just, those crates, and you would just, it was kind of an art to it. You would, because still having to climb up there, you just learned how to kind of launch that thing. That probably never like do something like that today. If it was on the lower ones, the lower area, storage area on the truck, it was not bad. You just kind of tossed them in there. But the top ones, we could kind of launch them up there and just line them up. Now, yeah, sometimes a bottle got broke here and there. You hear them. But they were, I'd say most likely, I don't know that. Maybe somebody at work for them would tell us. Maybe if they're in good shape, they just clean them up. I don't know. Maybe they melted them all back down. I'm not really sure on that part because I didn't deal with that. But some guys would get really careless and you hear a lot of them breaking. But if you were good at what you were doing, that was rare. Honestly, you just learned. And so I went there, and at first I wasn't dealing with that. I was just bagging groceries and stuff. But that summer, I don't remember what month I went to work there, but that summer, some things happened that was really alarming to me. And again, I worked in safety. I'm still a very safety-minded person, although I'm a training person now, manager, always concerned about safety. And even back then, I guess I've just always had this I was a safety advocate, I would say, on the job. There were things I questioned. And boy, did I get, and it's another reason why I think I got sort of blackballed or whatever you want to call it. They didn't like me. I was just the outsider. It's like going to join a club and they put all the white marbles and they have one that kicks you out. And some might say that's maybe a sign of the times and a sign of something. Why did it have to be those colors? And that's horrible if that's what it was. I really don't know, but you hear that sayings, and some of those sayings have been around, and you hear stuff like that. But I was on the outside and of getting opportunities. They wanted me to work. They liked my work, but there was no advancement, so I never had that. And which, that's nothing. That's kind of bugged me. But you want to move up. You want to learn new skills, earn a little more money. So I really got once I spoke up from what I saw, I really was labeled. And I know that, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I know that because of some things where I spoke up for another co-worker who was the same level job as me, great guy. Word got around real quick that I guess they would probably even say I was a troublemaker, but I wasn't. I was a quiet kid. I was shy. But some things you just have to speak up for, right? You got to speak up against racism. You got to speak up against somebody being abused or done wrong. You should speak up on the job when something's unsafe. You should do those things. You should say, hey, this is not right. Let's fix it. Let's make it right. So I'd never dealt with the bottles much. And somebody told me one day they sent me out to help. And I don't remember, but it seems like in my memory, I remember somebody telling me to be careful. And I'm thinking, I thought they meant hurt your back or something. But these bottles were heavy. These cases were heavy. And what I didn't know was I didn't even think about it. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I'm just doing a job, going to get it done. Great shape, having fun. It's hot though. You're ready to get back in the store. Let's get her done. But what I didn't realize is all those Cokes that were full stored out there, I didn't think about the pressure they were under. And I was working with this guy, and I knew this happened at least 3 times. And the first time I saw it was the first time I went out. And I think it was the first time. Maybe I'm wrong on that memory, but I do remember working with this guy. He was a great guy. And we were loading these we pulled off the fulls, and and that day maybe we didn't even have to pull up. Maybe there was already open spot. But I don't remember pulling them off, but we may have. But we were loading up the empties, and then another guy moved the truck back, and we were to bring in some fulls. Well, I think I might have even helped him load some up, but once we got to that part, they left him. He'd been there longer than me, so they wanted me back on bagging groceries. So I went and decided, well, the next thing I know, this young kid like me, he's, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years old at the most. He's got cut in the neck real bad, and they had to take him to the hospital. He had to get, I believe he had to get just a few stitches. And one of those big bottles, the 32 ounce, exploded on him, and that glass shot up into his neck and cut him. It's a serious moment. There was blood out there and everything. And they took him to the hospital. And of course, at that time, being 16, I didn't know about lost time incidents or anything, but I just felt bad for him. And I remember when he come back, here he is with a big old bandage on his neck. And instead of, I was even thinking, maybe some lighter duties for the day. The kid, he's got stitches. He's got a white bandage on the whole side of his neck. They put him back out there doing just regular duties. And I was in the break area that we had, and I was questioning it. And I didn't know that this guy was a manager that was sitting in there. But it turns out he was a manager over one of the other departments. And he did not like that I said that, because I'm like, why do you have to go back and do the same job? And I even said, maybe let's just let him go home for the rest of the day. No, I don't know. We're not doing that. Well, I didn't understand a lost time injury if you do that. I get that. but and he was kind of cracking on me, like, what do you want him just to, let's just lay him in bed and tuck him in, and all. He was being a real jerk, just a real smart aleck. I'm like, I said, the young man's hurt. He got hurt. He got stitches. I should have seen what was going to happen, because later when I got hurt, I told you that. I ain't gonna go into the story, but just these memories all come together. And I said, well, just give him something else to do for the day. And they're like, why? It's his job. I mean, it was horrible. So it alarmed me. I mean, wouldn't it? You see these bottles. I didn't see it explode. I heard about it. I went out there and looked, and I see they got the glass up, but I see where it happened at. There's blood there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the next time they sent me out there, I just felt like it was a ticking time bomb. And so I would be very careful when I would move the full ones. And it was one of those things like you see in the TV show where they're like holding something away from them as far as they can. I would turn my head. I don't want to do that right now because I'll be turned away from the mic. But I would turn my head, and I would try to hold it out, the bottles out as far as I could, because they're heavy. You can't do. But I just kind of shift it to my side, and I would just wince the whole time, grimace, that I just knew it was going to explode at any minute and cut me. And thankfully, by the grace of God, that never happened to me. I didn't have to do it every day, but it happened 2 other times that I know of. The others didn't get hurt as bad, but I saw one guy had Coke all over him. And he said, "Yeah, I had one blow up." And I said, maybe we don't need to store them in the heat. Just, hey, why don't we put them in the air conditioning? That got shot down. And again, I get that look, and I'm getting talked down to. And from there, I just became, I don't know, their punching bag or something by some, not everybody, but not all, but several of the upper management of the store, because I brought up safety issues twice. They didn't want nothing to do with me. And then I got hurt, but not on Coke bottles. I got hurt. And then, as I said, I'm not going to go into it, but I had to go have x-rays ran. And then the rest is just horrible. It's just, it's the worst style of management you could think of. And then some. No physical touches, but the verbal was unbelievable. To this day, I still can't believe that I didn't do more about that. I did stand up to them, but they really I really was I was harassed on the job. I was pressured. I was harassed. I was mocked. They were mocking me in front of others and laughing about it, high-fiving each other, and I eventually just quit. And they offered me to come back, and in a 16-year-old's way, I was mad and hurt, and I told them what they could do with it. But then later, I really needed the job. Sometimes and I couldn't get it. I had a hard time finding a job for a while. And if any of the people if anybody hears this I worked with, 98% of the people were great and were wonderful. It was only 3 or 4 people. But those 3 or 4 people can make life miserable, especially when they're over you at a job place. So I was concerned about safety, and these bottles that got returned, like I said, they would be traded out for. And I don't remember what they redeemed for. So if somebody could remember that, maybe drop me a line. I cannot remember it, but obviously, and I don't think they gave you. I don't think they gave you a ticket. They didn't like give you change. They gave you a ticket that you could redeem at the restaurant. I think you could have gotten the money, but most people would just, as they got their coupons and their, hey, don't forget this has got 15 cents off or whatever. These are 3 for $1. The person buying the stuff would say, hey, I've got this my bottle return deposit. They would say, I have my bottle return deposit, and they would then give you credit for that, and you would buy another. And we did, a really high volume. Like I said, those bottles, those Cokes they were just soaring. It was the biggest seller we had. There's no doubt in my mind for that time that I worked there. There's no doubt that was the biggest seller, and people that bought them bought many other things. And I was thinking of this recently as I was doing some security at a big box store, and if you watch everything's plastic or aluminum, But I watch these people and they'll buy these plastic bottles and the plastic that's holding them together. And just, if you'll notice, and you may have done this too, they put them on the edges of the buggy and they'll ride right there. And people are pushing these out to their car. And it just, I was thinking about this the other day and I was thinking, you couldn't have done that with what we dealt with because of the way they were packaged and how heavy. Matter of fact, most of those were put near the back of the buggy because full, those are very heavy. And you didn't want to put them in their front because it could cause you to tip the whole buggy over. So you put them in the back or in the very back or underneath there was room. You could sit them there. Of course, you had to be careful that they didn't, through the vibration, rock out and slide out onto the, the asphalt or the concrete or whatever it was. And of course, create a mess. But I remember that. Do you remember these bottles? I just think that is so cool as when I think about my time working in the grocery. And again, I'll say it was a great experience. I hate what happened. Like I said, I think probably me just getting it's really getting hurt and mad, embarrassed and everything else. I really wished I had handled things a little bit different, but I think it's all part of growing and maturing and learning. And I did. It did. It's, to this day, it has an impact on me. Whether you was going to the little mom and pop store or you was going to what we would call the big box store back then, which they weren't. That was a big store at the time. Most groceries were small, but you would have a way to trade those in single or in groups or whatever. In most cases, probably in the early days of this, there was probably only a cent or two, and then probably 5 cents. I can remember was very common for a long time for a bottle, and you could you could get change and apply that to candy or wherever. So if you was walking along and you saw a couple of bottles in the ditch or something that somebody threw out and they shouldn't. I still remember those commercials, right? Down here in the South, the what were they called? But the Tennessee ran them a lot. It was part of their campaign for littering. The Indian, right? And he would be weeping. You remember that? That's a whole nother thing. We'll have to come back and talk about that. But there were people had. I mean, why do people be so trashy? And that they would talk about keeping the Tennessee roadways clean, and maybe other states had similar things. I don't know if they had the Indian, but it was a great campaign. It sticks with me all these years later. But you would walk along and you would see glass bottles down, and now some glass bottles weren't redeemable, I think, but many were, and they usually were stamped on there what it was redeemed, how much it could be redeemed for, in a lot of cases. So a couple things, if when somebody sees this, if you could tell me the more about the bottle caps, because I really don't remember that much about them, just other than they were discounts or prizes or you were looking for certain things. Most of the time they got thrown away. And also how much the bottle was redeemed. And do you remember working with, whether it was RC, Coke, Pepsi, whatever it was, do you remember working with those bottles? And did you ever know of them exploding on people, when you worked or just hear about it? I just think that's interesting. I remember that. I hope this is enjoyable to you. It's just fun to look back, and hopefully by the next show, hopefully by the next show or maybe the next one, I'm going to try to take the fam to the drive-in. I'm sure my wife probably did, but I don't know if her family ever took her. I need to ask her. I'm going to ask her tonight, and when she gets home from work this afternoon, rather, and I'm going to find out. I'm not find out. I'm going to ask my grandchildren if they'd like to go do that. Just they'll probably hate it. Of course, they'll play on their phones the whole time, right? Oh, me. Well, we'll see you next time. Appreciate those that view the program. I remember that. It's a lot of fun to look back. We got a lot of memories. The older we get, the more memories we have, right? And don't they wish they had some sort of return program for plastic bottles now? Look at the problem we have in the ocean, everywhere. I mean, we talk about recycling. Come on. They're not recycled like they should be. Most of the recycling programs are a joke, and it's not a moneymaker. And a lot of municipalities and stuff, they just don't want to deal with it. A lot of cities, more hassle than it's worth for them. We got to do something. I mean, these things, they're piling up everywhere, and it is a problem. I mean, we have bottled water, in our home. I'm not for getting rid of everything. I'm just saying we need to find a way to, because I don't want people trashing the environment, You want to be able to go out and see the beauty, keep our waterways clean, see the beauty of God's earth, and we were just as bad in our day. So it's not like people sometimes look at the current generation and go, "Oh, they're horrible." Why did they have those campaigns back in the 70s? Because some people just didn't care, and they just tossed the stuff out the windows going down the road, and the sides of the roads were horrible. Of course, you had the prisoners, but they're getting back to that now in our area. That would go along and pick up trash, part of their community service. So that has kind of came back. They got away from it. It's starting to come back now because the roads are getting trashed. People they just don't care. Some people. Sad. But I remember that. What do you remember? Join us next time on I Remember That on the Southern Fried Podcast. And maybe we'll do one of these live in the future. We just thought we'd record this one, and we're going to get it put up. This is Friday that I'm recording it, so it'll probably go up over the weekend, I'm sure. Might even come out tonight. Who knows? But we'll do one next week and the weeks after, Lord willing. Have a great day. God bless. Thanks for following us. You go to any stream, but certainly Facebook, like and follow. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on X. And then we're on Truth and Getter and Parler. We're had a little trouble with Twitch. We're trying to get that straightened out. I'm not sure what's happened there. I've done a lot of looking at things, and we were live streaming through it, and we're going to get it fixed. It's just been a problem. We're also now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Some of the programs, not every program, but YouTube, Facebook, X gets everything. Rumble. Also, Rumble gets everything, and we live stream to Rumble. So let me not forget that. We got a lot of Rumble followers. Thank y'all for supporting us. We have some very important interviews coming, and you'll be hearing more about that. And this weekend, we're airing the George Eshelman, The Keeper movie interview, and you don't want to miss that. Saturday night. If we do post this tonight, watch tomorrow night. If we post it tomorrow, watch it first. And then I remember that. Have a great day. And God bless. We'll see you next time.